is time for Around the 412 with Smitty and Tyler.
Welcome back to another episode of Around the 412. I am Tyler. With me, as always, is Mr. Nose Ring Boy himself, Smitty. Be sure to go follow us on all of our social medias at Around the 412 and go check out our pin tweet on X, as well as the links in the description of the show where we've got year 6 of Rocking Around the 412. It's our Christmas funder. I'm sure all of you have heard all about it over the past several years. Over the past 5 years, we've been able to raise over $25,000 with the help of everybody that's been able to donate to provide Christmas for the children in our local 724 and 412 area codes, because Smitty and I never really had to worry about where Christmas was coming from growing up. So we wanted to be able to give back and provide some of these kids with the same opportunities that we had around the holidays. So if you want to check that out, the link is in the description of each of these shows on the listening platform, as well as in the YouTube. And like I said, it is our pin tweet on X. And also you can check out the Everything Custom Designs. We've been talking about getting the trick-or-treat bags, but it's too late for that.
Hopefully you got them. Yeah.
Hopefully you got them. It's a little too late for that, but you know, there's some Halloween's coming up, but also some other holidays are coming up as well. So you'll be able to get check out a kitchen apron for Thanksgiving time, or maybe even some Christmas pajamas or something like that. Maybe a Santa Claus hat, maybe anything like that. Not a normal hat, but it's our friend Haley Wagner. So if you want to go check that out, it's a local small business in the Beaver County area. We have a Facebook and an Etsy link, so go check that out and see what she can get for you. But it's not going to be a normal hat.
No, but shout out to Pittsburgh Clothing Company too. That's who I'm rocking right now on the hat, since Haley doesn't have them. Also, which we've really never talked about, but would apply at any point in time, but especially with Christmas, you can use these as gifts too, customized gifts that she can do for your kids, your grandchildren, whoever. Customized clothing is really cool. So, and also she's done Around the 412 stuff before. So if you want to have her make an Around the 412 shirt, the exact same ones that she made for me, please do. But also shout outs to somebody else, Game Changers, based out in LA. They sent me some shirts. I'm wearing one right now. Roberto Clemente. This thing is fire. I don't know if you guys saw the picture that I put up, but I got TJ Watt one, I got a Yammer Yager one, and I got a Sean Taylor University of Miami one. So awesome. They're I don't even know how to describe them. They're a heavier material. They call them heavyweight material. But it's an oversized t-shirt. Huge fan of that company. So you probably see me shout them out on Twitter and Instagram already. So go give them a look. Really cool. A lot of Pittsburgh stuff too. I think they got at least 20 designs that are Pittsburgh based. So go check that stuff out. But all right, let's jump into the Steelers. Big win over the Los Angeles Rams. And, jokingly before we started recording, we were talking just how we always do before. And we were saying, basically talking trash on the Penguins. Well, always the Pirates on the Penguins, the way that they've gotten out of the gates this year, and saying how they suck. And then I said, yeah, and the Steelers suck too, but they always just find a way to win. They don't suck, but they don't look like a 4-2 team until the fourth quarter. The way that they're able to turn on a switch within the fourth quarter, the defense obviously is what keeps them in the game. And then you get to the fourth quarter and you get Dan Marino at quarterback and Kenny Pickett. And Alan and I have had so many discussions about this. There's nothing there that you can just say, this is the reason why this is happening. But I feel like we have enough evidence going back to Pitt and into, his first 18 starts in the NFL here now to say, this is a legit thing. If you get the football in his hands with a chance to win a game, you can feel good about him doing it. The problem is, is the defense always going to be able to keep the opposition down enough where that is the case, where you have him getting the football in his hands with a chance to go and win that game? It's obviously impressive. We've talked about this before too. It's why you can't be fully out on Kenny Pickett. You can't just write off the amount of game-winning drives and fourth quarter comebacks that he's had in such a short career. But it's so maddening to not be able to pinpoint the reason that he can't do this for 3 quarters, and then all of a sudden this other guy shows up for the fourth quarter.
It is pretty wild. I wanted to look at his splits based off of his quarters this year. He's definitely better in the second half overall, and then the fourth quarter actually is his best quarter. So that not just the eyeball test, but the stats also back this up. Whenever he is playing in the fourth quarter, he has a almost 73% completion percentage. He has also has the most yards in the fourth quarter over any other quarter that he has. It is a weird thing, and there's nothing to really go off of it. You guys are right. Then that's the peculiar part is like, is this just a Kenny Pickett thing, or is this more so like as the game moves on, not just he's getting better throughout the game, but like the offense as a whole is getting better throughout the game? So it's going to make him look like he's just getting better in the fourth quarter. And it could be a little bit of both. Like it obviously, like as you're playing the game, you're going to feel out the defense, learn what you can do early on, how you can move the ball and such. So maybe that's just a case of Canada and the rest of the offense figuring out what moves the ball, and by the time the fourth quarter rolls around, and so they know how to execute the offense better. But it is interesting to look at, even like you said, going back to Pitt, it seemed like Kenny always played better when he was under this pressure. And he had several game-winning drives at Pitt, especially his senior year. I believe he had 7 his senior year.
Yeah.
It's something that he has a knack for. It's obviously something you don't want to have a knack for. You don't want to have to be in that situation all the time. But at least I feel comfortable saying that we have a clutch quarterback, and which is weird to say because I can't really say necessarily that we have a good quarterback, but we do have a clutch quarterback, and I think there's a difference.
Yeah, here's just some numbers on this too. And again, we're talking PFF here, so you take this with a grain of salt, just adding some context here, but like this is so the vast difference. Like I had to bring this up. Quarters 1 through 3, 53 PFF passing grade, 6 yards per attempt, and a 75.9 passer rating. Quarter 4, 78.2 PFF passing grade, 10.1 yards per attempt, and 102.8 passer rating. Now, the difference in terms of where he ranks league wide there go from quarters 1 through 3 being 34th ranked, 33rd ranked, and 32nd ranked, respectively, to 4th, first. He is first in the NFL in yards per attempt in the fourth quarter and 5th in the NFL in passer rating in the fourth quarter. What in the world is happening in the fourth quarter that isn't happening in quarters 1 through 3? Like it is. I do think it is the entire. I don't think it's just Kenny. I do think it is, the entire offense, because if you look at this Rams game specifically, that's the game I really want to focus on because it's the one that just happened. In the second half, I think they found some answers here. And, we have several times had the conversation on here like, oh, did the offense break through? Is there something that we can look at and say this is going to continue to carry over? I think the difference here for me, though, is they had this bye week. We talked about it last week. Like, were they going to be able to do what they did last year out of the bye week and be able to self-scout, look at things that they did well, and then do it on Sunday? And I think that happened. You looked at there was one play. I think that their best play of this season came in this game, and it wasn't even like a long gain, and it wasn't even a touchdown. They've been really good at running trap lately. And you can only do this against certain teams, because if you have like teams that like 2 gap or something, you're not going to be able to do it. The Rams don't do that. So the Steelers kind of exploited that. But here's what they did differently on this one. They ran play action out of it. And you'll remember the play as I'm going through it here. And then Kenny rolls out and hits Connor Hayward, who, it's like an 8-yard gain. He gets tackled at the 2. But the play was such a cool concept to me, and it was different. And I think that is the type of thing that people are looking for. That's been my biggest gripe with Matt Canada. It's not necessarily the plays themselves. Everybody in the NFL has the same plays. Maybe not the sequence in which they're calling them. There's not going to be a huge difference between, Sean McVay. Let's go to Sean McVay because that's who we just played. Between his actual playbook and Matt Canada's playbook, in terms of the plays that they are calling. What is different, obviously, the execution of them, but also the way that they dress them up and the way that they sequence them and how you build off of them. I thought it was really cool to see them build a passing play off of this trap run that they've been so successful doing. So to me, that was the play call of the year so far for Matt Canada, and it was like a 7 or 8 yard gain just because it was something different.
Is that the one where Connor Hayward got tackled on like the 2 or 3?
He got tackled at the 2, and yeah, I'm sure he's here. I just talked with Chris and Alan on today's afternoon drive, and we were saying like, yeah, he definitely heard about not getting in the end zone from Cam.
He had to have. But you're right. I think that when you have plays like that are successful, you can open up more designs in your playbook, which helps out a coordinator, and helps out the offense in general. Like you were saying, there's not like a ton of variety when it comes to the actual plays being called from one coordinator to the other. It's how they set up their formations and how they disguise those plays that are being being called in the situations that they're in. They don't have a situation like nobody could have seen what Connor Hayward was going to do with Kenny Pickett rolling route on that play, except they were able to do it. And so that's a credit to them being able to use the trap in the early parts of that game and working towards that. That's kind of what you want to get to over all the aspects of your offense, not just in the trap and not just in that run game. I was curious to look at so we looked at Kenny Pickett in the fourth quarter. I was curious to look at guys besides Kenny Pickett. So, and it's more specifically the running backs, how they varied from first quarter to fourth quarter. And I was just looking at on a season split. Najee Harris's best quarter is the third quarter, like by far. Mm-hmm. Over the other quarters, he has gained 48 yards in the first quarter, 57 yards in the second quarter, and 44 yards in the fourth quarter. In the third quarter this season, he's gained 151. And Jaylen Warren's best quarter by far is the fourth quarter. So not only is Kenny Pickett getting better, you have your running backs as the game goes on get better with him. So there's probably some correlation there as to the whole offense gets better as the games move along. It'd be nice to be able to start a game and not have to wonder what is going on. But the baby steps. It's hard to complain about wins. So there's that, but there's still things to critique for sure. I think that this game specifically for the Steelers, I thought that they took some strides offensively in certain aspects, like you mentioned, like the Connor Hayward play call. That's probably the best play call individually of the year. Still not perfect, but I thought that the offensive line even looked pretty good at certain parts of this game,
especially run blocking.
The one guy that we questioned the week prior, why is Dan Moore Jr. coming back? He had a pretty good game himself. It was hard to argue that Broderick Jones should have been in over him because of the performance that he had. So despite still wanting to complain about the defense and the fan base not being the offense, and the fan base still being upset about the offense overall, I think there's still some things that we can look at and say, like, they are doing a good job and they are getting better in these aspects, game in and game out.
I think Dan Moore saved the coaching staff from having to answer a lot of questions and like that being the huge talking point of the week. I mean, if he didn't play well in this game, could you imagine the conversation that would be going on right now around Pittsburgh, like with us right now? What would we be talking about if he didn't go out there and play well? And again, it doesn't mean that I agree with the decision, but I think you got to, tip your cap to Dan Moore specifically for going out there and doing that and really like, I don't want to say picking up the coaching staff, but because they feel like they made the right decision. They don't feel like that needs to happen. But again, protecting them from having to answer any questions about the decision because he went out there and played, I thought, as well as he could in this game. Specifically run blocking, I thought that they were really good in. Isaac Seumalo, I feel like, has continued to stack and get better week in and week out. But the one guy that we've really talked about on the offensive line, Mason Cole, low bar to say it was his best game of the season with how he's played up until that point, but really good, I thought, in this one. He also didn't allow pressure. He had 28 pass blocking reps and didn't allow a single pressure. So, and that's going, he saw a lot of time against Aaron Donald. When it wasn't him, there's honestly, like, there's not another guy I can name in the interior of that Rams defensive line. But again, when you're talking about having the type of season that Mason Cole had up to that point, I thought that was a pleasant surprise. James Daniels got back in there. He had a really nice seal on the Jaylen Warren touchdown, climbing to the second level. I was really impressed with what those guys were able to do as a run blocking unit for sure. Chuks took a holding penalty. He did give up a sack. Although in the one was like the second play of the game or whatever, there was obviously miscommunication on there because the guy just comes off the edge unblocked. Like Chuks, I think that he thought Connor Hayward was going to block on it, and that clearly wasn't the plan. So I don't know what went wrong there. But yeah, I was impressed with the offensive line performance. I was also impressed with the receivers. Getting Diontae Johnson back was obviously, I think that we knew it was going to be a huge addition for this offense. They've only gotten to play 3 quarters together up until that point, the first 3 quarters of that San Fran game before Diontae got hurt. Personal fouls aside in this game, which accounted for like 70 some yards and penalties for the team when you consider the yardage lost on that Pickens crackback block. But those penalties aside, that duo is really good. And I think going back to a conversation we had earlier, just a perfect complement to each other. You have Diontae, who's like a route technician, can create separation against anybody, finds the soft spots and coverages, as good as anybody at finding blind spots, can run every route in the tree. And then you got George, who the other parts of his game have really started to develop. But I mean, I would say if you're looking at like a go-to play this year for the Steelers, it's probably that back shoulder to George right now. That's been, their bread and butter, and they know that they can go to that anytime. But he's been really good after the catch this year. I believe he's actually right now leading the league in yards per reception, if I'm not mistaken. I think that he overtook whoever it was. I think he's at like 21.2 yards per something like that per reception right now, which, if I'm not mistaken, if stats guy Daniel, if I was reading that stat correct, actually I should just pull it up, and then I can give Daniel. He's first in something. He is first in something for sure.
I can't find if he's first in yards per reception right now. Right now he's averaging 18.5 yards per reception.
Oh, the stats guy Daniel, look at this. He's catering this specifically for the Steelers. Yards per reception since week 2.
Oh, okay.
Is George Pickens number 1, 21.1, Nico Collins 20.3, Brandon Ayuk 17.4. But I appreciate him just totally eliminating
the point still stands
to make George Pickens number 1 there. But no, I think it goes back to another point that we've tried to make here, where even if it wasn't showing in the box score on a week-to-week basis, it is very clear that George Pickens has taken a year 2 leap.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that he's one of the more dominant players on the field. Even when he's not getting the ball, you can see like some of those all 22s that you get see posted after the game happens. So you just see how much better he is than his opponents that he's going up against, and some of those routes that he's winning that he's not even getting the ball to. I think that he's taken a huge leap. This is the receiver that we were hoping we were getting, the one that nobody wanted to touch in the first round, all because of the character issue stuff that people were worried about. And you see the talent that he has, because people were saying like this guy should have been a round 1 receiver, but he wasn't. And so that's to the benefit of the Steelers, and the benefit of the Steelers, like you had mentioned, getting Diontae Johnson back. That was one of my keys to the game, like getting him involved early on in the offense, the quarterback's best friend. I thought that they were great together, and having Diontae Johnson back opens up George Pickens even more. And I think that they both ended the game with 5 receptions, I believe. I know George went over 100 and Diontae had around 80. I mean, they both had solid days.
He would have been over 100 if, like I said, that crackback block that George took eliminated Diontae's. He would have had 6 for over 100 if that counted.
Yeah, so they both had good days, and I think that this is going to be great for the offense, and more specifically Kenny Pickett, as we had mentioned several times. Like, Diontae Johnson is going to help Kenny Pickett feel more comfortable, which, speaking of comfortable, I feel like Kenny Pickett did look a little more comfortable in the pocket this time. He didn't spin himself into sacks, which is something that is progress, because we've seen that for several weeks in a row is a big issue with Kenny. Is I don't know if it's just the mentality of like his internal clock is too fast for himself, and he has to get out of the pocket because he feels the pressure is coming before it's actually there. But even I think it was somebody posted it on Twitter, and it was a play where he could have spun out and he could have spun into a sack, but instead he steps up in the pocket and delivers a dart of a throw. I think that that's progress you're seeing from Kenny, which helps this offense overall, but it helps Kenny to progress as a quarterback because he's getting those tendencies out of his system. I'm sure that's something that they have to be focusing on, because if we can notice it, I know the coaching staff is noticing it. And like, it's like, you have to work on this. You have to not create that mindset where you feel the pressure. You have to stay in the pocket and let the play progress around you. Even if the pocket is collapsing, step up to it if you need to. Just do not basically spin yourself into a sack yourself, because that's just hurting the offense.
I mean, without knowing for sure, you would have to think that that was a primary focus for them during the bye week. Was, you talk about self-scouting. How many times have we seen that on tape? Imagine how many times they've watched that same thing happen over and over again this season with him. And I'm sure they saw it at Pitt too. We've talked about that. It wasn't something that was a bad tendency of his that you got to try to break. It's a habit that he was able to get away with in college, and it has not happened. It's not going to happen in the NFL. So you got to try to find a way to break that. And hopefully this game was a step in the right direction. I'm sure they've watched this game over several times. We know that Kenny watches every single play of his over. So, maybe he saw, okay, here's what I was doing in the first 3 quarters. Towards the end of the third quarter, it started to pick up. Look at what I was able to do in the fourth quarter. How do we keep this rolling, and get started faster? So hopefully we see that from the offense. I do want to say, and we'll carry this over into a conversation about the defense too. Is it time to have a conversation about Allen Robinson? Like, especially in the absence of Pat Freiermuth, you're really getting nothing in terms of pass catcher. Like we just talked about how good Diontae Johnson and George Pickens are as a duo. But, I think you got to have a reliable number 3 option behind those guys. And as much as I like Calvin Austin, what I think he is a vertical threat gadget player who's really good as like a 4th option. I don't see him being that number 3. And I really think this is going to get highlighted as we go on more games without Pat Freiermuth. And I don't think that his return is on to place a guy on IR before we're like a couple days after he got hurt, knowing he's going to miss at least a month. I wouldn't be surprised if he misses most of the rest of the season based off that injury. So I'm not saying specifically this name, but they were listed as the betting odds favorite, not just among the favorites for DeAndre Hopkins. Do you think that maybe they should look to add another pass catcher?
In the absence of Pat Freiermuth, I don't think it hurts. When you look at Allen Robinson, what he's done through 6 games with the Steelers.
He's so cooked. I mean, he's just
82% snap count, by the way. He's been on the field over 80% of the time, and he only has 18 catches.
Because he's a good blocker. Like, that's all they're asking him to do, but he can't separate. Like, his injuries, and it's not all his fault. His injuries have completely sapped him of his athleticism. He can't do it.
Yeah, I think your prediction of him leading the team in touchdowns, despite having like a third of the catches, is not going to. I
mean, I might be somewhat close on the number of catches, but
yeah, maybe you're close on the catches. But I mean, he's averaging 3 receptions for 24 yards in a game, and he's still on the field over 80% of the time. And I get it's for the blocking, but for what you want the improvement in the passing game to be. Now, granted, getting Diontae Johnson back, that helps a lot in the passing game, but you're still lacking. And I feel like teams, once you play teams with good secondaries, they can make you more one-dimensional if you only have 2 pass catchers. Because honestly, after Diontae and after George, you could make the argument that Connor Hayward or Jaylen Warren is probably our best pass catcher after those 2 right now. And so with that being said, my thoughts on DeAndre Hopkins are, if there is a trade there that could make sense for the Steelers, I'm open to the idea, but it depends on what they want for a return. I think the Steelers could probably come up with some sort of return for them, but is it going to be enough that the Titans would be okay with? And is it something that's not going to be matched or beaten by some other team that wants DeAndre Hopkins? I think that's the trouble that the Steelers are going to
have to think with what they're getting from their, like, why would the Chiefs not be in on this? Like adding something to Travis, when Travis Kelce's been their only reliable weapon. Like, I don't know. That's who I think of immediately.
Yeah, the Chiefs would make a lot of sense. I mean, after Travis Kelce, what, like Sky Moore, Tank Dell, like you're relying on a second. It's Kadarius Toney. You're relying on a second and first year receiver as your top 2 that aren't really producing that much outside of like Travis Kelce, the offensively passing. They're not really producing that much. That would make sense. So I think that teams are going to beat the Steelers, whatever the Steelers would offer. I don't even know what the Steelers would offer, to be completely honest. Like, how much is DeAndre Hopkins worth to them? I don't think it's that much. If you're going
next year under his contract, if the team wants it, but I think it's relative. I don't want to say like expensive, but it's not cheap for him. Which, is that a benefit to the team or more to the player? I don't know. So I think that somebody would probably give them a third. I don't know if the Steelers would give them a third.
Yeah, that's the part where I'm just like, I don't know if it's worth it. Mainly because also where is he playing on the field? I'm sure it's DeAndre Hopkins. You're going to find room, but who's going to be moving around? Because you're keeping George on the outside. So does that mean Diontae just goes back to being a slot receiver, and you have DeAndre Hopkins on the outside? That's what I would presume would happen. And then when Pat Freiermuth does come back, I guess that opens things up there. I don't know. I'm intrigued by the idea for sure, just because of the lack of pass catchers that they do have right now. But once Pat Freiermuth comes back, I feel like my want for DeAndre Hopkins might go down. But who knows? I mean, maybe Pat Freiermuth does come back, and it's still mainly George and Diontae, because we didn't really see a lot of Pat Freiermuth when he was healthy anyway. There wasn't that great of a connection with him and Kenny in the early parts of the season. So I'm at least open to the idea. I don't think that the Steelers will do it. Although then again, maybe I'm wrong. Let me say this. Like, maybe I am wrong, and that's something that they will do, because I have to get out of my head the way that the Steelers operate. Because in my head, I still think the Steelers operate where it's like, if we don't trade for players in season. Like, I just remember whenever the Minkah trade happened, how abnormal that felt. And then I look at them in the next year trading up in the draft to get Devin Bush. I mean, that didn't work out, but just for them to do something like that was so un-Steeler like it felt. And so to have that happen, maybe I should change my mindset of this is something that Omar Khan, and that's another thing. Colbert is gone. So maybe that's a Colbert mindset that I have. Omar Khan has shown to be a little more aggressive with what he's doing as a GM. So maybe that is a realistic possibility. And those odds makers are correct that the Steelers should be the odds-on favorite to get DeAndre Hopkins. Listen, I'm not going to complain about DeAndre Hopkins at all. I think that he's still a solid receiver. I think anybody who thinks he's not a good receiver at all, I think it's crazy to say that he's washed. I think he still has value that he could bring to the Steelers. But I just don't know that it's going to be able to work out in the end. Like, I don't think that they're going to get a deal done. And honestly, who knows if the Steelers even have any interest?
Yeah. So, excuse me. Like, I think I would like to add another pass catcher for sure. While we're about to talk about the defensive side, and I would address that side of the football first. I think that they could definitely use a pass catcher. I just question if there's a little bit of redundancy between what DeAndre Hopkins brings and what George Pickens brings to the table. Like, would it make more sense if we're talking about a way to get Allen Robinson off the field to look to add a more natural slot? Like, I don't know, call the Raiders about Hunter Renfrow or something like that.
I saw you tweet about that today.
Yeah, as opposed to a guy that strictly is going to play on the outside, or you would think. Get a guy that lets you keep, Diontae and George on the outside and can just feast in the slot. Because right now, I mean, watching the Raiders, I don't see anything different about Hunter Renfrow on tape. He's just not getting the ball for whatever reason. So I think Hunter Renfrow still is a pretty good player. Now, don't love the contract. That's, another issue. But I mean, for some reason, he got like 2 void years after next year. Next year, his salary is like 13 million or something like that. 11 million base salary, 13 million cap hit, somewhere around there. So I don't know. I don't know how you work around that aspect of things, but just from a football standpoint, I think a guy like that doesn't have to be Hunter Renfrow, but a guy like that makes more sense than looking at a DeAndre Hopkins.
Yeah, DeAndre Hopkins, if you're just looking strictly at contract, would be a better option for the Steelers just because he would cost less than Hunter Renfrow would. You're right. Hunter,
which is crazy.
Which is crazy. Hunter Renfrow does have a cap hit of 13.1 next year, and then there's a potential out after that. But if you kept, it would be 13.7 the year after that, and Hunter Renfrow would be 29 years old that year. Yeah. Obviously, the contract itself, you're not in love with, but I think Hunter Renfrow, a player, he's been a solid NFL player. He's been a solid slot receiver for the Raiders, and that's something that I think that the Steelers could definitely use as a really solid slot receiver in this offense, because we've kind of talked about how Pat Freiermuth is your true slot receiver whenever he's on the field. So to be able to add that element to the offense, I'd be open to that. I do think that you're right that even though Diontae could move into the inside with the slot, if you did get a guy like DeAndre Hopkins, I think he's best suited to stay on the outside and have George on the outside as well, and then you bring in somebody that could be in that slot receiver. And it's funny that we're probably people are questioning listening to this, like, you guys are talking about slot receiver. We have Calvin Austin there right now. Like, but that's not the point. Not going to work. So if you're going to get a true slot receiver, you're going to have to go out and get one.
Yeah. The thing with Diontae, man, like, yeah, you can move him inside, but guys that can separate on the outside, they're not, they don't grow on trees. So I think that the Steelers offense is best suited if he can stay on the outside. I want to flip the script to the defense, and we'll talk about the performance they had in this game first and foremost. Even when he's not getting to the quarterback, even when he doesn't get a sack in the game, it's still TJ Watt that turns this football game around. That play is hilarious to look at, by the way. Like, that is the only time they've run that play this year. And the Rams talked about it afterwards. They were like, we thought they were in single high safety because Minkah was the only safety on the field. Like, they had him drop back. They had Patrick Peterson drop from corner. And so he ends up being basically a safety into a cover too. Mm-hmm. And then TJ, so they're playing zone defense. TJ's covering like a curl to flat and reads Stafford's eyes. He passes off the coverage to Minkah on Skronik, I think he was covering, passes off that coverage, reads Stafford's eyes, jumps in front of Cooper Kupp, and almost takes it to the house. But it's like, everything, the 7th career interception, by the way, for TJ Watt, just finding ways to impact football games, even if he himself is not getting to the quarterback. He's going to make a splash play at some point throughout the course of a football game, and just continues to impress me. So I think that he was once again, kind of the catalyst for turning this football game around, because the Rams had the lead. They scored that late touchdown in the first half. I don't even know what in the world to call that Tutu Atwell touchdown, where he basically picks the ball off from Patrick Peterson, Levi Wallace, but no idea what those two are doing on that one. But the Rams get the ball to start the second half, and you feel like, okay, if they can put a drive together here, with the way the Steelers offense is going, they're almost out of this football game if the Rams can put a drive together here. TJ turns this thing on his head, gives the Steelers all the momentum, and we saw how it turned out. So once again, TJ Watt impacting football games.
He's the best player in the world. I think he's, especially if you want to talk about defense, he's definitely the best defensive player. I argue with whoever you want. I don't care what position, whether it's a safety, whether it's a corner. I don't care. He's the best defensive player in the world. And I think you could have the conversation that he's the best player in football. And yes, that includes against the likes of like Patrick Mahomes. I think that how valuable he is one of the most valuable players in all of football, regardless of his positions. The impacts that he has game in and game out, like you were saying, this is something that the Steelers needed in this game. It was 9-3 going into the second half. The offense wasn't moving the ball. You needed a spark. TJ provided that. And how many times has he provided that before? I think the conversation should shift to he's the best defensive end, to not only is he the best defensive player, but arguably the best player in football, period.
I mean, again, it's hard to argue. I'm so sick of the comparisons, obviously, with Myles Garrett, who is an awesome player too. Both sides are going to think the guy that plays for their team is the best defensive player in the world.
Nobody wants to talk about, too, that outside linebacker and defensive end are different positions, but...
Right. I mean, because... TJ is in a position on that where you are never going to see Myles lined up in, obviously. Mm-hmm. And Myles does things that TJ isn't going to be asked to do. So
like jump over the middle of a line.
That was stupid. Yeah. But they're both those to me are 1 and 2. I would put those two guys above the guy that just won Defensive Player of the Year last year, Nick Bosa. I would put them over Micah Parsons. Now, again, people who are fans of these teams, they're going to go to bat for their guy, and I get that for sure, 100%. We're a Pittsburgh show, so
I'm hitting the grand slam for my guy right now. Going to bat. I'm not striking out. Listen, he's the best player in football. I'm hitting the grand slam right now.
But yeah, obviously, again, turning this game on its head the way that he has. The Steelers are 4 and 2, and where are they at without TJ Watt? So I think that He
Where's
does
this franchise
certainly
at without TJ Watt? I think that's a serious question. Where's the franchise at in as a whole if they do not have TJ Watt?
probably picking a lot higher in drafts.
Probably. If they don't have TJ Watt, that affects a lot of things.
Mhm.
Like you're not going to have a good enough defense where you trade for Minkah Fitzpatrick. I think that it affects your team more than people are going to realize because of a single guy. Like TJ Watt is in the sense of how much gravitational pull he has for a franchise. He is the franchise quarterback in quotations of this team, where that's how much pull he has as a player.
Yeah, I agree. And you look at another guy that obviously doesn't have that same level of impact, but Minkah Fitzpatrick, I thought too, like he didn't have an interception this game, but once again, just being asked to do things that, hopefully we are, as we go throughout the season here, see him be able to move away from. They were able to, one of my keys, you brought up one of your keys earlier, was to neutralize Cooper Kupp. 2 catches for 29 yards. I know he had a couple drops in this game, but even with those,
because he heard
would have been at
footsteps.
he would have been at like 4 and 60 or 4 and 50-ish range, somewhere around there, probably even with those. So, I felt like they held him in check, and that was the goal of what they wanted to do. Let everybody, Puka Nacua going off for 154. I mean, I think that they were not necessarily okay with it, but you take that because you were able to hold Cooper Kupp down.
That's been the Steelers' defense this season, though, right? Like they're going to give up a moderate. In some games, it's moderate. In other games, it's more dramatic. A moderately big game to at least one of the receivers, but they're going to keep the rest of the defense in front of them. That guy's going to get his, but the rest of the defense is going to be held in check. And so, yeah, Puka was able to go off, but ultimately, how much impact did Puka having all those catches and stuff actually change the game? Like, obviously, it made it a little closer, and they were able to move the ball. But ultimately, like, it's not like he scored a touchdown. It's not like I just don't think that them giving up all that yardage to him. Obviously, you don't want that, but I don't think it had a huge impact on the game itself. Also, while we're talking about Puka, that was incomplete. Let's just keep it a buck. And this is a BYU fan saying that. Okay, that was incomplete, and I will concede that was incomplete and say that Kenny was also short on that 4th down. I can fully admit both sides of that.
Yeah, I mean, Kenny is like a visual thing. We can clearly tell he's short of the sticks. The Puka one, you actually have to look at the rule book and go based off the interpretation to say that it was incomplete. Because
I just don't know
they
how
consider
you call that
that
a toe tap.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not.
I don't.
I mean, we saw last year with T. Higgins doing the exact same thing. That it wasn't.
I don't see the difference in someone catching the ball on their toes and then their heels touching the ground. Like if they were landing behind them, I don't see the difference between that and what Puka did, except Puka was falling in the process, and so that's why they considered it a toe tap. I don't know.
If you want to say that you feel like that should be changed, that it is a catch to do that, then that's a different conversation. But that's not the way that it's laid out, and it hasn't been called that way. So by the rule, that should not have been a complete pass. So people that are like complaining about Tomlin challenging, he got it right. He got it right. Everybody, the refs got it wrong. And Dean Blandino, who came on and explained it, got it wrong. I don't know how this has been called this way. And even in the same day, Jake Bobo of the Seahawks, basically the same thing as Puka, but it also got called complete. And I'm like, what? Did they change the rule over the summer or something? Like, what are we doing? But yeah, shout out to Puka. He got his yet again. Unbelievable talent. And man, I don't know, based off, because with what CJ Stroud's doing in Houston and stuff, he's got to be on the short list though for offensive rookie of the year right now. I mean, I don't know that he's getting talked about in that light, but like CJ Stroud, him.
I mean, if he keeps up having like 7 or 8 receptions a game, like it's going to be hard to argue, especially for, I think he's proving that he should have been drafted higher than the 5th round, regardless of where you looked at him in the pre-draft process. Like he's the number 1 receiver out of that draft class right now.
I remember talking to Jake about him when me, Jake, and Derek did a mock draft. I brought him up because, Jake's really into receivers, and I asked him about him. And at the time, he hadn't watched him yet. So I remember telling him that he's probably not going to go until day 3, but I would take him on day 2. And I probably more like round 3 than round 2. I'm not going to say I was like super high on him compared to anybody else. But I remember the reason that I asked Jake about him is I thought he would be perfect in Green Bay. And obviously that didn't happen. They took some other guys like, I like Jaden Reed a lot too. They took Dontavian Wicks as well. I'm not sure if Wicks went before or after Nakua, but like if they made that swap, Wicks out, Nakua in for Green Bay, where is that offense right now? I mean, I think he has that type of impact. He's been a safety valve for Stafford with or without Cooper Kupp being part of the equation. So, yeah, I've been highly impressed, but I want to transition that Puka Nacua talk because he had 154 yards in this game, but when covered by Joey Porter Jr., 0 yards in this game on 3 targets. Joey Porter Jr. played more snaps in this game than Levi Wallace. So I want to ask you, Jags week, Joey Porter Jr. going to start?
Yes, he has to. He's your number 1 corner. I don't see an argument against that he is your number 1 corner right now. I thought he played great on Sunday. I think his play has been elevated every single week since he started to get more snaps on the defense, and he's been getting more and more snaps defensively. I think he needs to start because I think it's been clear. If it wasn't clear in the Ravens game, I think it was clear definitely in this Rams game that like he has turned into your number 1 corner. And unfortunately, I feel like that is not only a praise to Joey Porter Jr., but it's also an indictment of how Levi Wallace and Patrick Peterson have played up to this point in this season. The level of play that you expect from those guys hasn't been there, and Joey Porter Jr. has risen to the occasion several times this season. I think that he deserves to start, and not only deserves it, I think he needs to because he's your number 1 guy on the outside.
Yeah, I think I don't want to say conundrum because I'm in the same boat as you in terms of him needing to start, but I do think that we saw a little bit of why the Steelers haven't trusted him to play in an every down role yet get showcased because of his tackling technique. And I say technique because I don't think it's an unwillingness to do so. I just don't think he's very good at it right now.
Which
I think
is funny coming from his dad.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So that's why I do think that like the desire to be good in that area is there. I don't think it's going to be an issue as we go on here, but right now he's not very good in that area. So you can understand why, somebody that I assume is a stickler for that in Mike Tomlin hasn't been able to throw him onto the field in every down basis. Another thing too is obviously he is really good as like a press man corner. He wants to get his hands on you at the line of scrimmage. That's where he excels, is just being able to be sticky on guys. The other two in Levi and Pat are not going to play man. They're zone corners for different reasons. Like Patrick Peterson, especially at this point in his career. We saw that crossing pattern that Puka ran on Sunday. Patrick Peterson trying to keep up with him was, as bad as that Nico Collins touchdown in the Texans game.
And here's the thing, Puka's not even fast.
Right. Yeah. He's
compared to some receivers, he's not fast.
Right. He's got like 10 plus yards of separation on Patrick Peterson on that one. I actually thought Patrick Peterson was okay on Sunday in doing they played him all over the field. I think that he can play some different zone coverages, but clearly like he can't play man. And that's the conundrum the Steelers are in. Like, what do you do? Play half of the field man and half of the field zone? Like, how do you, and you can't rotate Joey in.
The offense is never going to see it coming.
You can't like rotate Joey in with them because it's going to be a tell into what you're doing when he's on or off the field. Like, okay, they're going man or okay, they're going zone based off if Joey's on the field. So I don't know how you get around that. But
maybe you have Joey play man and Levi play man, and then you just have Patrick Peterson play more of a rover type of player and just basically you feel it out.
Yeah.
You don't cover in man.
I think the asset that he brings at this point is being able to read quarterback's eyes. But, again, we're well past the point of him being able to play man. And let me ask you about this. Then we talked about DeAndre Hopkins or Hunter Renfrow or any pass catcher, that's out there, if it would be worthwhile for the Steelers offense to add them. On defense, do you think it's possible that the Steelers kind of look at the corner market? Or if it's not corner, do they maybe look at the safety market? To be able to let Minkah do some different things. Like, I'll throw this name out there. He was already moved once. if the Titans are going into a sell mode, what reason do they have to keep Terrell Edmonds? Could a reunion there make sense? Like, are there some guys out there? Do you think the Steelers will be in the market for a defensive back?
I think Terrell Edmonds could make a lot of sense, especially because the contract that he signed with Philly, we were like, why couldn't he have done that in Pittsburgh?
They would owe him $200,000 for the rest of the season if they acquired him.
Yeah, I think that reunion would make a lot of sense. You and I were definitely Terrell Edmonds defenders in a sense. Like, obviously we there was still faults of his game, but we were defenders in the sense that, like, people, I feel like, overlooked the value that he brought in his role that he was asked to play. I think a lot of people thought he should have been better in having ball skills or coverage in that sense, but that was never the type of player that you were going to get with him. But I do think he added a lot of value to this defense, especially when it came to having Minkah as a partner.
Right.
It allowed Minkah to be able to do what he was able to do as a traditional free safety. I think that would make a lot of sense. And as far as corner goes, I think that you should look to add a corner just because, like we said, you're limiting yourself if you're playing Patrick Peterson because you have to play in zone. And Levi Wallace has been a disappointment up to this point in the season. Joey Porter Jr. is your clear number one. By the way, 78% of the snaps defensively this weekend. He's going to make that even higher this upcoming week against the Jags. I'm just saying that now. But I'll just say this, and I saw this name thrown out several times, not just to the Steelers, but just in trade talks. I would give up my first and more for Patrick Surtain. Yeah. I think that would be a great addition. Obviously, going to be a lot of a trade package that you need, but Patrick Surtain, that's a true number one corner. He's a young guy still on the rookie deal. I think that would be a great addition. And I mean, imagine having Joey Porter Jr. and Patrick Surtain as your quarterbacks of the future. I mean, that back end of that defense would be shored up right away. It's going to take a lot to get them, but as long as you're not trading away anybody like TJ or Minkah or someone like that in the process, I don't care. You could go get them. Trade a first-round pick and a third-round pick, or trade a first and a second, or whatever you want to do. I think that would be a great addition. Obviously, there's other corners out there you could go get, but that is definitely like the one that is the most attractive right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't get it from Denver's side to even be like, I guess you have to say you're listening, right? Like, if somebody comes to the table and is going to offer you like multiple firsts or something like that, and they're obviously not close, and you got to try to like recoup picks to make up for the Russell Wilson debacle that's been. But man, to me, that's a guy that even if you're going into a rebuild, you keep around. I mean, he's only in his third season. Like, I really don't get any of the smoke that's there. But if he is on the table, I think every single team in the league should be calling, whether you're contending right now or not. Because again, I know he's going to be doing extension, like he's extension eligible after this season. And I'm sure he's going to want paid. He's without question one of the top three corners in the NFL right now. So I know that he's going to be looking to get his money, plays a premium position. Don't know what that contract's going to look like, but yeah, I mean, I'm with that. That is like going big game hunting right there. If you were able to swing something like that, Jaylen Johnson of the Bears, another very good player. There's been talks that that his agent's talking extension with the Bears right now. So we'll see if he's even in play, but that's another pretty young player. He's 1 year older. So he was drafted in 2020. So he's on the last year of his rookie deal. And then, there's other guys that are maybe but do they go big game hunting like that, looking towards like a future piece that they feel like is long-term, or do they look for like another, not Levi Wallace this year, but what they got in Levi Wallace year one, where it's like, you're just talking about a guy that, can come in, be plug and play right now, and you'll look for a future solution down the road?
That's probably the smarter move. And I was just thinking while you were talking about Patrick Surtain that it would basically be mirroring what you did in 2019 if you went for a guy like Surtain, because even despite having,
I think they'd probably be giving up more. But
well, no, I you'd be giving up more. But I'm what I mean by that is like you're going after the big fish, even though your offense up to this point has been a disappointment. And your defense is definitely going to be the one to carry. Like, they would really be just buying.
You're making the strength stronger.
Your defense is going to win you games. That's what that trade would say to me. But I do think that it's smarter to probably, or not necessarily smarter, but that's probably what the Steelers would tend to do, is go for someone that is a more plug and play for this year, a cheaper deal that could get done. And it's someone like a Levi Wallace or someone like a Steven Nelson in the past, that someone that's not necessarily a premium, but they could come in and play and bring some value to the outside there. And while I'm talking about value, the Terrell Edmunds one makes so much sense to me now. If you want to get Minkah back to being just a traditional free safety too.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it on here. We don't know the reason, but like the reason that, at least this is just my personal opinion. I think the reason that him and the Steelers decided to go different ways was a philosophy thing. I think Terrell Edmunds, Mike Tomlin, they were like, listen, let's take a look at our secondary. We want all these guys. And this is also why I think they prioritized KZ over Edmunds. Ball skills. I think that was something that they were prioritizing within their entire secondary. They wanted everybody to be able to take the football away. Bringing in Patrick Peterson, a guy, active lead, or no, Harrison Smith actually passed him. So second right now among active players in interceptions. But I think that is why they decided to move on from Terrell Edmunds. But now you've seen what life after him looks like. And while you were prioritizing ball skills, you inadvertently took it away from Minkah, though. So while Edmunds himself might not bring that to the team, he allows somebody else to be in a position to do so. So it's not necessarily about what Edmunds is doing himself to me that makes him so valuable. It's about what everybody around him is able to do because of his presence.
And how lucky are the Steelers that they have a guy like Minkah to be able to move around, where basically wherever the Steelers need him to be on the defense.
I mean, we're not happy that he doesn't have an interception this year, but you look at like, okay, somebody has to be doing these assignments. Like, again, Cooper Kupp, 2 catches, 29 yards, largely because of Minkah's presence on him. It wasn't Deebo Samuel that ate the Steelers alive in week 1. It wasn't Hunter Renfrow, that got them in week 3. Who did they play in week 2? I don't even know who he's played mostly against in week 2. Actually, that first rep, he was on and it threw the Browns off, and then Alex Highsmith has the pick 6 on the first play of the game. He's lined up on the outside against Amari Cooper, like as an outside corner. And I'm sure the Browns are like, what the heck is this that they're showing us right now? So, I mean, regardless of if we are on board with the assignments that he's done and want him to be doing different things, he's been good at whatever he's been asked to do.
He still takes away half the field. Like whatever his coverage assignment is, it's not being thrown to all that often.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a credit to him, but you would certainly like the Steelers to be able to do something to get him back into a better position. All right. So Jaguars week. How do we see this one playing out?
The Steelers are playing not just the Jags, but their upcoming teams that they're going against. They have an opportunity to have the offense take a step forward because they're playing some not so good defenses. This Jags specifically, I feel like the Jags offense scares me a little bit. I trust our defense, but whenever you have a guy like Trevor Lawrence, who can be a stud, and then you have Calvin Ridley and Christian Kirk, and then you have Travis Etienne in the backfield, I feel like there's a lot for me to worry about. Where when I just look at the team as a like a roster. But I think that the Steelers have an opportunity here to win some football games and to perform well. I think that the Steelers are going to win on Sunday. And I think that they're going to win, and you're going to see the offense look better. You're not going to have to rely on your defense to put you in good field position in order to move the football. I think that if I'm going to put a final score on it, I will put it at 27-20. Steelers are going to win.
Okay, so you think the Jaguars' defense is overperforming this year, or what? Because their numbers are like they're, so their DVOA, which I don't know if are you familiar with DVOA?
What am I, a nerd? I don't know.
Okay, so I mean, DVOA is a statistic. It's on the offensive and defensive side of the football. It's defense adjusted value over average. So, obviously this goes 1 through 32, the ranking. They are on overall 8th offense. They are 13th total offense, 10th in passing, 15th in rushing. Defense, they are 4th total, 6th in passing, 6th in rushing, and even their special team, 7th. So they're pretty well rounded as a whole. But so when you said like being able to take advantage of their defense and stuff, you just feel like they're overperforming right now, or what? Like given their personnel?
I do. I mean, the one guy that I think that is good, you're definitely going to have to worry about still is Josh Allen.
Stud. Yeah,
absolute stud. But I think that the Jags have been overperforming on the defensive side of the ball. I think that there's an opportunity.
I like their off-ball linebackers, Devin Lloyd and Foye Oluokun. Is Tyson Campbell playing for them? It's
not that I don't like. Also, I do like Devin Lloyd. Unfortunately, freaking Utah Ute. They're who they taking the Trayvon Walker pick still doesn't make sense to me, but whatever. That's what happens when you draft only off traits and not off game film.
So Tyson Campbell might be back. He was limited. They had 5 starters either limited or didn't practice on Wednesday, but it was Wednesday, so we won't have a better indication of that till tomorrow. But Tyson Campbell's a really good corner too, so we'll see if he is able to get back. Have we been in agreement every week this year? So because we're like the Steelers, at least
last week we were different. I predicted the Steelers loss, and you predicted the Steelers win.
Oh,
I said the Steelers were going to lose 23-15, and you said the Steelers are going to win 18-15.
Okay. So yeah, I get the Jags in this one, so we're gonna be different again. I am not going to be incredibly discouraged by that. I think that the Jaguars are one of the top 5 teams in football. Like, I think that highly of them. And it's also a little bit like, I don't think like the Bills aren't the same this year. Like, there's teams that I feel like are underachieving right now. And I think the Jaguars are kind of starting to hit their stride. Winners of 4 of their last 5, or have they won 4 in a row? 4 of the last 5 for sure, maybe 4 in a row. But really, since that loss to Houston, I feel like that was kind of a wake-up call for them. Yeah. So that was kind of a wake-up call for them. And I've been impressed with what they've been able to do on both sides of the football. You know how big of a fan I am of Trevor Lawrence. I think he's got all the pieces there. And I do like a good bit of what they have going on defensively. To your point, I think that they could definitely use another pass rusher on the other side of Josh Allen, but like, I like their pieces. Other than that, I mean, you got at least one guy at every level. When you talk about Devin Lloyd, Foye Oluokun, when you talk about Tyson Campbell, Andre Cisco at safety, like they got at least one piece everywhere on the field at all times. So I think this could be a very good game. I've had this one circled since the beginning of the year. I'm going to say 27-21 Jaguars.
So our scores are basically flipped, almost. I said 27-20.
27-20? Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Yep. And again, I will not be discouraged by this game just based off that result. Now, if we go out, show nothing offensively again, you know, there's definitely a world.
27-3.
Yeah. Like there is a world where I think that we go backwards from where we are right now, but I don't think just the result would do that for me. I think that this is a really good Jag. I think as long as you win 2 of the next 3, all 3 at home, right? You got Jags, Titans, Packers, all 3 at home.
You better win the Titans game. 3. For personal reasons.
For a lot of reasons. I mean, that team, the trade deadline is before that. So you think that other than Kevin Byard, who's already been traded, that team is going to look very different by the time the Steelers play them.
Is there any chance that the Titans trade Derrick Henry?
Apparently, they're saying that's a good chance. It might be to the Ravens. Yeah.
Man.
Imagine him and Lamar in the same backfield. That's stupid. But okay, so say that that's not the worst, though. Say that a team in the division gives up like a 2nd-round pick to get him, doesn't win anything, and then he's gone.
Imagine him behind the Browns O-line.
Yeah. Well, that's honestly, I think those are 2 of the top 3 or 5 betting odds for him.
That'd be ridiculous.
Yeah. But we'll see. We'll see how things play out. We'll see if the Steelers make a move. Again, you know, you mentioned it earlier. It's not necessarily, we can't go based off old tradition when it comes to the Steelers. They haven't been the same Steelers under Omar Khan, and we'll see if that holds true at this deadline. Moved Chase Claypool last year, so kind of on the other side of that.
What a fleece! What a fleece, by the way. We haven't really talked about that on our show. What a fleece. He's not even in Chicago anymore, and we got the 32nd overall pick for him.
Yep, which turned into Joey Porter Jr., who we expect to get his first start on Sunday. So, anything else?
Nope. That's it. Just go Steelers. That's all. Keep winning.
I like it. In the comments, let us know your score predictions. One of us is going to be right. One of us is going to be wrong. So whose side are you going to be on for this one? I mean, we all want Tyler to be right, but I imagine the predictions will also kind of coincide with that. As Tyler mentioned at the beginning of the show, check out the description where you can find year 6 of Rocking Around the 412. The GoFundMe link is right below. We give Christmas in its entirety to kids in the local 724 and 412 area codes. Thanks to you guys donating money. Every single penny goes towards that mission, and in return, you guys are going to be eligible to win some great prizes as long as you donate at least $10 right now. For sure, we know we got Pens tickets. We're about to talk, like, letting you guys peeling back the curtain here. We're about to go talk about the Penguins, and things not off to the best start this year, but still obviously want to go see them in action. Going along with that, and Eric Carlson jersey will be part of that too. And on a much happier note right now, with Joey Porter Jr. will be part of that as well. So obviously we mentioned the local kids stuff also last year, and going forward, we're partnering up with the East Rochester Salvation Army to give kids from their angel tree the Christmas they deserve as well, in the name of our late friend Dalton Keene. Kaylee and Isla have teamed up with us for this part of the mission, and we're really excited about it. Also, shout out to Keats Barbershop, who's the sponsor of this show, is also going to be the official drop-off spot for people, because Kaylee set it up really cool. She's got people that are literally taking tags as well, and going to make it super easy on us, so those people can just drop everything off at the barbershop, and we will take it from there. So shout out to Keat for letting us do that, and he's going to take at least one tag as well. So shout out to him and his wife, Hannah. And then shout out to our friend Haley Wagner as well. Everything Custom Designs, her Facebook and Etsy links right down below. Get a customized shirt, hoodie, apron for Thanksgiving. Can't get a trick-or-treat bag at this point. And, hey, 2024, right? I mean, it'll be here before we know it. Maybe a stocking for Christmas.
You'll get it on time.
Custom. Yeah, I bet you did that one on time. Everything custom. It should be called Everything Besides Hat Custom Designs, because you cannot get one of these bad boys from Haley. Totally different machine. She's got some BS excuse for if you
non-headwear custom designs.
Yeah, there you go. But other than that, for Tyler, for Smitty, this has been Around the 412. Go check out another one of our videos popping up right meow, and we'll see you over there. Bye-bye.